Hi everyone, today we're taking a look at the Galaxy S3 versus the Galaxy S4. Now, as you'll know, the Galaxy S4 is the new addition to the Galaxy range, really replacing in many respects the Galaxy S3, or at least that's what Samsung would like everyone to think. What we actually find is that these two devices are very, very similar. Whilst the Galaxy S4 does have substantially more performance power under the hood, the physical dimensions of the devices are very, very similar. In fact, you would be forgiven for thinking they were one in the same device. There's only a few very minor changes within the actual housing, as it were. So the major change, housing-wise, is a bit of a rejig in the kind of tapering that's available around the edges of the device. The Galaxy S4 is a much more smooth and tapered edge on it. It really helps the in-the-hand feel as you're holding the device. With the Galaxy S3, I found that after, half an hour or so of holding the device, certainly in landscape mode, I was finding that my hand would get quite stiff, unfortunately. It would start to cut in certain parts of my hand. But with the S4 I found it was much more comfortable for a much longer period of time. The other things they've done is to relocate where your speaker points are. Instead of having it up on this top corner on the S3, it's down here on the bottom on the S4, much more similar to the Note 2. Also moving is the LED flash to put it more central, and the actual aperture of the camera now appears to be much larger as well. The actual camera sensor itself is bigger and so takes up more space on the back of the housing. USB port is similarly placed to previously, although the noise cancelling microphone has been switched around. The buttons, though, on the S4 are considerably better than on the S3. For starters, they've moved the volume rocker up. It's a lot higher, making it a lot easier to hit with your thumb. The buttons are kind of softer, if that makes sense, but not in a way that is worse. It actually makes them better. They have a slightly more definitive feel when you kind of hit them. The only thing I'm not overly keen on is that the actual volume rocker on the S4 doesn't pop out quite as far on the as on the S3, and that can sometimes lead to misclicks or occasionally feeling like you've not quite hit the button when you actually have. But it does have an overall more solid feel. They've also made it considerably longer on the power button as well. It's a bigger button, but again, it doesn't quite pop out quite as far as you can see on the S3. So again, it does lead to the occasional have I hit the button or have I not, but it does have a better feel overall, and it being slightly longer does make it generally easier to hit every single time. Obviously, with the Galaxy S4 versus the S3, we can't really get away from mentioning the absolutely phenomenal screen on the S4. Not only is it 1080p, which is twice the resolution of the S3, it really pops. It's a 5-inch screen versus the 4.7, I think, on the Galaxy S3. Oh, my Google Plus keeps crashing on there. And honestly, I mean, the screen difference is like going from, a little Fiat Punto to a Formula 1 car. It really is a massive difference to both the look and the feel and the usability of the device. Having that extra screen real estate there, the extra resolution, you can see it just in the videos itself here. The ability to read the on-screen text is considerably better with the S4 versus the S3. The S3 just feels slightly fuzzy in comparison. Now, that doesn't actually mean that the S3 is fuzzy. It doesn't mean that it's a bad screen or anything like that. It just means that we've progressed, and the more pixels we can squirt into an inch, the better the quality of the screens we're getting, the better readability we're getting. Now, I've made quite a few points previously about the speed of the Galaxy S4 versus the S3, and really that is the biggest deciding factor. If you are someone who wants absolute raw performance power, if you're looking for the very fastest handset on the market, the fastest games, then the S4 has it in spades. If that's not something you need, then you will not actually notice the difference. Seriously, you won't. Really, where the Galaxy S4 comes into its own is with gaming, is with high performance computing requirements. So, crunching video, playing games. If you can actually notice the difference between an app loading up on this and an app loading up on that, good luck to you, because it doesn't actually make that much difference. You might be talking a couple of seconds here or there. It just doesn't matter. For my mind, the Galaxy S3 is still an absolute market-leading device. It now fits into a slightly new part of the categories. It would now be more of a mid to high-end range device, where the Samsung Galaxy S4 is very much a high-end device. It's aimed at the top end of the market. If I had a choice as to which one I would buy, I would say it comes down to what you're going to be doing with the device. There's not enough new shiny in the Galaxy S4 to make me say, okay, if the price difference was £200, would I pick the S3 over the S4? I probably would, actually. However, like I say, if you are looking for the new shiny, if you're looking for the very best, then the Galaxy S4 offers it with spades. The downsides are cost. There are still some teething problems and manufacturing issues to be resolved on the Galaxy S4 that may very well make the S3 a more dependable device to buy today. You can walk into a shop today, buy a Galaxy S3, and you know it's going to be pretty solid. It's had 8 or 9 months on the market to be perfected. The Galaxy S4, on the other hand, still has some rough edges with its software and some manufacturing issues they still need to resolve. And so, if you're in the market today, if you're looking to buy a device for somebody else or recommend a device for somebody else, highlight these points. If you're looking for a big screen at 1080p, then you may want to go for the Galaxy S4. If you're looking for cutting-edge, bleeding-edge device with absolutely bags of performance, you've got 2 gig of RAM in here versus 1 gig in here, and you can tell the difference between that in some games, then you may want to pick the S4. However, if you're looking to save money, but still have one of the leading devices on the market, you could pick the S3. As I've said previously, for my mind, the S3, the S4, and the Note 2 are the 3 devices you choose between, and it now comes down to what are you going to use the device for. All 3 devices will provide a phenomenal experience. You're not going to pick up an S3 and go, I wish I bought the S4. Not particularly. You might look at the S4 and go, oh, I wish it had that feature. Well, hang on a little bit, because Samsung will probably be backporting that anyway. One of the things that we're running on both of these devices is Android 4.2.2, the very latest and greatest from Google. Now, this is on the S3 a leaked ROM, which means it's not official yet, and so it still has some performance issues and some bugs that you've seen whilst we've been doing this review. It's crashed a couple of times. But with that said, what we're seeing coming from Samsung indicates that a lot of the features that they have on the Galaxy S4 will find their way across to the S3. And obviously a lot of the features on the S4 were also available on the S3 anyway. Things like the S Calendar, S Voice, and so on. On the software side, really, you're gaining on the Galaxy S4 things like S Health, which is a very cool application, I must say. Also, Optical Reader, another very useful application. A lot of the time with the Galaxy S4, you kind of feel like it's about the software more than it is about the hardware. The gap now between different devices and their hardware each year, and more importantly, will end users notice the difference and gain the benefit? It's kind of gone a little bit strange now. It's a bit like how we ended up in the PC industry, where a computer you bought 3 years ago is still good enough today if you just bung a bit more RAM in it or something like that, or a slightly faster graphics card. You don't find yourself having to replace the entire computer. And one thing that we're starting to see really in the mobile phone industry is that same gap, where you could buy a device that was, or get a device that was on the market 2 years ago and still find it perfectly acceptable today. Likewise, with the Galaxy S3, you really are not going to notice the performance difference if you're an average user. And that's the key thing here. If you're someone who uses your phone for browsing the web a bit, making a few phone calls, the odd game, you probably don't need what the Galaxy S4 is offering you. However, if you're a hardcore user, if you're looking at that cutting edge and you want that big screen, absolutely cutting edge performance for games and that better future proofing moving through for the next 18 months to 2 years, then I would say the Galaxy S4 is the one to go for. The S3 is going to find its home now in the mid-range of the market. It's going to be the perfect device for mum and dad, for your grandparents, or potentially to give to the kids if you don't particularly want to give them something that's worth £560. With that said, I would always advise you to make your choice based on what you're going to be doing with the device. There's no point in having more performance power than you actually need if at the end of the day it's costing you money based on the actual physical cost of the device, and potentially more electricity as well, because obviously these devices need charging. The S4 is very power efficient, but it's still only just on par with the S3, even though it has the bigger battery in there. My personal feeling is that the battery life is not really that much difference between the two. You may be talking 20 minutes, half an hour on the charge, on a full charge, and that's about it. Not enough to justify saying go with this one. It has the bigger battery. The bigger battery unfortunately means it's driving a much faster display, much faster CPU and GPU, much bigger display, and obviously a much brighter display as well. So the trade-off there is bigger battery, but not necessarily longer battery life. Hopefully you've enjoyed this look at the Galaxy S3 and the Galaxy S4 and a bit of a discussion as to which way you should go. As I say, really now it's about that personal choice. What are you going to use this device for, and how comfortable do you feel having the cutting edge versus the middle of the road? Personally, this is a tried and tested device. It's been on the market for a fair old while now. And that's not to say it's any slouch, we're only talking about 8 months, but with the Galaxy S4, what we've got is a brand new device. It's still got some kinks to work out, but it certainly is the cream of the crop as far as the top-end smartphones are concerned.